Brandon Herrera has faced a little bit of an unfortunate setback in his campaign for the House of Representatives for Texas District 23. That's because President Donald Trump has actually endorsed his opponent in what I can only say is a baffling move. Tony Gonzalez tweeted out, "Thank you, Mr. President, #Texas23. And here's a screenshot of Donald Trump's Truth Social post endorsing Tony Gonzalez. The president said, "Congressman Tony Gonzalez is a terrific representative for the wonderful people of Texas's 23rd Congressional District, a retired Master Chief Petty Officer from the U.S. Navy who bravely deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Tony knows the wisdom and courage that is required to defend our country, support our brave military and veterans, and ensure peace through strength. In Congress, Tony is working hard to grow our economy, cut taxes and regulations, promote Made in the USA, champion American energy dominance, keep our now very secure border secure, and defend our always under siege Second Amendment. Tony Gonzalez has my complete and total endorsement for re-election. He will not let you down." Absolutely baffling. I don't know who's advising Trump, but whoever told him to endorse Tony Gonzalez needs to be fired tomorrow. This is ridiculous. He will not let you down? The guy's got a terrible voting record. In fact, even against Trump's own stuff, Tony Gonzalez has a bad voting record. So what's Trump even talking about here? Does he have any idea about what's going on here? Was he lied to by his advisors? I don't know, but I'm not happy about it. Brandon Herrera actually responded to it and said, "I wonder if he knows what you've been up to this last few months." Don't worry, the voters of Texas 23 do. And I want to draw your attention to something very interesting here. So Tony's tweet, where he puts up the endorsement, only has 194 likes at the time that I'm recording this. But Brandon Herrera's reply has 10,000 likes. That's one hell of a ratio. That's what, a 50x ratio? This ratio shows, I think at least, what the voter sentiment is towards Brandon versus Tony Gonzalez, at least in my opinion. And I'm not an election expert. My concern would be that Brandon Herrera, being a YouTuber, right? Such a big YouTuber, he has a lot of people who follow him and support his campaign that don't live in Texas 23. Now that's an issue because you can only vote in the election if you live there. So this endorsement becomes a big problem for Brandon, because if it somehow manages to convince enough people in Texas 23 to vote for Tony, well then Brandon's screwed because his audience is spread out wide and far. I'm a little worried about this, guys, but at the very least, the responses have been on point. As far as I'm concerned, I think Brandon has responded pretty well. We have a tweet here from Bayless Wagner, who is a reporter for Express News, the Houston Chronicle, and Statesman, and she put up the tweet saying, "Texas 23 GOP candidate Brandon Herrera responds to Trump's endorsement of Tony Gonzalez. I am not only planning to stay in this race, I am planning to win." And then she posts a complete message from Brandon saying, "I completely understand President Trump's need to endorse incumbents, no matter how bad, to help secure Republican votes in the House. But Tony has betrayed Trump before, and he will again. I am not only planning to stay in this race, but I am planning to win. I do have to wonder if President Trump has been briefed on any of the rather damning scandals Tony has embroiled himself in." And I think that's a pretty good response from Brandon. Honestly, I understand what Brandon's saying, that Trump has to endorse these people in order to try to get some votes in the House for things that he wants passed. I think it's a scummy way to do business, but that's the way Congress works. There's not a single institution in America that's disliked as much as Congress, except maybe the IRS. It's just disappointing to see Trump endorse Tony Gonzalez when Tony seems to stand, at least in my opinion, for the complete opposite of everything America first. Whereas Brandon actually stands for America first. Not the Rhino version of America first. Brandon is a, actually kind of a MAGA America first guy. He might not be a card-carrying Trump supporter that's always on the side of everything Trump does, but he is in fact more aligned with Trump's goals and the goals of the Republican voter base than I think most Republican candidates in the country are. That being said, Brandon retweeted Bayless Wagner's tweet and said, "Tony has betrayed Trump before, and he will again. If he believes any endorsement can save him from his voting record, his scandals, or his lies, he is sorely mistaken. We will win, America flag emoji." And I'm glad that Brandon is feeling confident. I do think that hopefully he will win. Considering he almost won in the last election cycle against Tony, I still think he has a very good chance at winning. I'm just concerned because what happened here? What deal was struck behind the scenes? Who's briefing Donald Trump? It's a mess. But it does seem like, at least on the internet, and I don't know how representative this is of the local district population, but the internet, most of the people who are being vocal about this are upset on Brandon's behalf. So if we can go through a few of them. First off, we've got Donut Operator, who just responded with LOL. And then down here in the replies, you got Ronnie Adkins responding with a very apt GIF. Of course, then Alexander Duncan says, "Whoever is advising President Trump on endorsing these morons needs to be fired." And then Stump WB down here says, does he know that the guy with the entire veteran community, as well as the current active duty community in his back pocket, is Ernest's competitor? Ernest meaning Tony Gonzalez. But of course, Donut Operator's comments are going to be pro Brandon. So let's look at a couple just random samplings, right? So here we have Tony Moon. the actual roof Korean himself, responding saying, why is Trump all fired up about Tony Gonzalez? Is he not aware of Brandon Herrera? Then you've got the lectern guy saying, after this betrayal, I will not be voting for Trump again. Brandon Herrera for Congress. Obviously, it's a little tongue-in-cheek because Trump's not going to run again. Somebody responded to him and said, what am I missing? Why the betrayal label? To which the lectern guy responded and said, there is nothing America first about Tony Gonzalez. He's a terrible candidate with an awful voting record. And then bringing up a picture here talking about how Tony Gonzalez was the sole Republican who voted against an amendment that would prohibit TRICARE and the Department of Defense from covering and furnishing gender transition surgeries and gender hormone treatments for individuals that identify as transgender. Then we got this person here named Drew saying, what is with Trump endorsing these effing rhinos? He endorses them, then gets mad when they effing puss out on something or actively work against him. F Tony Gonzalez, vote for Brandon Herrera. We've got Anthony Laurie here saying, Tony Gonzalez is a neocon shill who consistently votes with the swamp. He was even censured by the Republican Party of Texas. For Trump to endorse him shows his lack of judgment. But this is not the first time he has made a shitty endorsement. He's got a track record of this, and that's fair. Trump does have a terrible track record with his endorsements. In fact, I think the biggest problem that Trump has had in both of his presidencies is there's just people around him that feed him bad info and help him make bad decisions. It's incredibly frustrating. You have OSINT Defender, who I know for a fact this account is kind of left-leaning. Even OSINT Defender was shocked to see this endorsement, saying, President Donald Trump has decided to endorse Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez, who supports gun control and previously was the sole Texas Republican to oppose the Border Safety and Security Act of 2023 for Texas's 23rd Congressional District instead of Second Amendment activist and media personality Brandon Herrera. So obviously the way that he frames this, saying that Tony Gonzalez voted against the Border Safety and Security Act and that he supports gun control, that's painting Tony in a negative light because obviously those are negative things. So those are anti-Trump things that Tony has done. And he's implying that it's bizarre that he's endorsing Tony instead of Brandon. And I think it is bizarre. So what can Brandon do about this? I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know. I think that the best thing he can do is rely on the fact that not very many people seem very happy about Tony being endorsed here, and a lot more people seem happy about Brandon's response saying that the endorsement is stupid. It's a worrying development for sure. I'm certain that Brandon's campaign team is trying to figure out a way around this. I know Brandon knows some people that are close to Trump. For instance, he's talked to Pete Hegseth in the past, and they had Jared Isaacman, who was just appointed to NASA, was on the podcast just a couple weeks ago. Potentially, you know, they could have somebody say a couple words to the president and maybe get him to switch his endorsement. I don't think that's likely. I think it's more likely that Brandon is just going to have to fight this one out and win on his own merit. And I think that he has a good chance of doing that because obviously Tony does not have the best record, whereas Brandon has an actual connection to the voter base, the Republican Party voter base, something that a lot of Republicans lack because so many of these rhinos are completely out of touch with the voters. And it's just so frustrating to see people go out there and vote against things that the American people voted for, right? We voted for Trump in a landslide, essentially. He won more than half the popular vote, which is something that a Republican hasn't done in a very long time. And then our Republican senators, our Republican members in the House, they just completely ignore that and betray their voters. I will never understand the boomer Republican attraction to giving your opponents everything they want whenever they want it. It's just stupid, and we need people like Brandon to try to fight against that. Hopefully Brandon wins. I don't think this is a massive setback because I'm hoping that people don't really pay that much attention to Trump's endorsement, considering he posted on Truth Social and like 6 people use that website. Who knows? We'll see what happens. What do you guys think is going to happen? Are you disappointed with Donald Trump's endorsement of Tony Gonzalez, or do you somehow think that it was the right move? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. Remember to like and subscribe. Have a great day, and God bless you.